Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking, and happy the Batman Day! Not to be confused with Batman Day on September 17th. And we're celebrating by looking at the first good original superhero game ever made, developed by British studio Rocksteady and released on August 25th, 2009. Development began in May of 2007, with Paul Dini being brought on very early as the game's writer. Dini had plenty of experience with Batman already, most notably as the head writer of the excellent Batman the Animated Series. Speaking of the animated series, Arkham Asylum also saw the return of Kevin Conroy, Mark Hamill, and Arlene Sorkin as the voices of Batman, Joker, and Harley Quinn respectively. In the special case of Arlene Sorkin, Rocksteady managed to get the first ever person to portray Harley Quinn, as her debut was in the animated series. In fact, Sorkin continued to be the main voice of Harley Quinn until her retirement in 2011. But before the voice cast was established, a story, setting, and all the other fun game development stuff had to be established. Under the direction of Sefton Hill, the small team of 40 set out to create a wholly original Batman story that wasn't based on any pre-existing story, though it took inspiration from the works of Frank Miller and Neil Adams, and especially Grant Morrison's Arkham Asylum, A Serious House on Serious Earth. The team also found inspiration from other video games, like BioShock, which can be seen in the art direction and presence of lore-enriching audio logs, and The Legend of Zelda and Metroid, which is shown in the ability to use gadgets to further adventuring progress. The dev team actually faced a lot of challenges in development, as you would expect from a team of at most 60 trying to deliver on the promise to create the first ever truly great Batman game. But their sheer passion, dedication, and talent led them to fully delivering on their promise and creating a game that is definitely 2009's Game of the Year over Uncharted 2. Rocksteady wanted to create Batman's worst night ever, and locking him on an island full of his biggest and baddest enemies will certainly do that. Will it be as bad of a time for us? It won't, but let's pretend like it's a mystery as we give it everything we've got! The game opens with Batman driving the Joker to Arkham Asylum, and you will immediately notice just how good this game looks. Remember, this is an Xbox 360/PlayStation 3 game, and it still competes with games coming out now. It's even more impressive when you consider that the last Batman game that came out before this one was this. Well, aside from the Lego one, but that's a story for another day. The story on this day is that Batman walks through the intensive treatment building to deliver Joker to his cell, all the while getting introduced to a lot of this game's key players in one of the smartest video game openings of all time. We get to meet Warden Quincy Sharp, he's important, Officers Aaron Cash and Frank Bowles, they're important, Dr. Penelope Young, she's the impetus for this whole series, Killer Croc, Commissioner Gordon, and Mark Hamill's amazing Joker voice.
That reminds me, I really need to get me some new shoes.
Move up.
Don't be a stranger. You're always welcome here. Gotta say, it's good to be back.
We get some kind exposition that a fire at Blackgate Penitentiary temporarily relocated hundreds of inmates to Arkham, and not even one full minute after Joker is free from Batman's immediate grasp, he initiates his master plan to have the inmates run the asylum. Well, technically the Joker's goons shipped in from Blackgate, but you get the idea. This is the introduction to the famous Arkham Combat, also known as the best combat system in any game ever made even to this day. I don't even need to explain it, just look at how smooth it is.
Get him up, let him get up, let him get up, let him get up. Fight back, nigga! Fight back, nigga! Fight back! Fight back!
Basically, you tilt the analog stick toward whatever inmate you want to hit and press the attack button, while also countering when the blue lightning icon appears. Or if you're an epic gamer, you play on hard mode, which removes the icon entirely. The combat controls were intentionally designed to be as simple as possible to simulate how easily Batman commits wholly non-lethal genocide on they asses. What's interesting though is that one of the biggest positive aspects of this game wasn't the developer's first intention at all. Arkham Asylum was originally going to be a rhythm game of all things, with combat being tied to differently colored buttons like Guitar Hero. Thank God they changed their minds. Another interesting fact is that most of this game was motion captured, with Rocksteady going so far as to bring in a professional gymnast to capture Harley Quinn's movements. Sometimes they kept the mocap as it was, and other times they would go in and edit the movements to make them more expressive or stoic. Back to the game, in the vent close to the window Batman smashed like he was trying to recreate Stone Cold Steve Austin's entrance is the very first Riddler Trophy, and a good percentage of think people who have played these games just shuddered or cringed.
Shouldn't we be saving Prince Horace from King Dragon?
Will you relax? I am trying to find every pine cone, okay?
Riddler Trophies are Arkham Asylum's main collectible, and unlike a certain other game, they aren't a major pain in the bat ass to collect. 240 may sound like a lot, but most of the trophies are easy to locate. You get maps that outline the general area, and there's like 50 million guides online to help you find them all. Plus, there's an extra benefit to collecting them, as most of them will unlock character models or challenge maps that can be viewed in the main menu. Speaking of menus, every important character in this game, and plenty more that aren't even in it, get character bios filled with cool art and lots of information, and I enjoyed reading all of them. Anyway, it's immediately after this that Batman encounters the next semi-collectible in the game, Joker teeth. In every building and overworld area, there will be a certain amount of Joker teeth that Batman needs to destroy, and they are yet another thing connected to the Riddler, as are every other collectible thing I mention after this. They're small and certain areas are lit very poorly, so it's a good thing they make an annoying, shattering sound so you can detect them. If this is sounding like a lot for Batman to deal with on his own right off the bat, fortunately for him and the player, he isn't maidenless, and he has the assistance of Oracle, aka Barbara Gordon, aka Commissioner James Gordon's daughter, aka Batgirl previously, aka Bruce Wayne's daughter figure, except that one time they had sex on a rooftop or something. She essentially serves as Batman's only communication with the world outside Arkham Island and furthers the plot when Batman can't. Continuing on with the character introductions, as openings tend to do, Batman's first real challenge comes in the form of Victor Zazz, an absolute mad lad who carves a tally mark in his skin for every person he kills.
Go mentally deranged, yeah? Go brainless, yeah? Go wacky. Go positively bonkers, yeah? Go mad, bruv. Lose your marbles, yeah? Don't fool it.
Zazz was the first of what would become an Arkham series staple, bringing in lesser known and sometimes even irrelevant Batman villains and giving them their 15 minutes of fame. If not for Zazz's appearance in this game, it's very possible we would not have gotten Anthony Kerrigan's exceptional portrayal of the character in Gotham, or his appearance in Birds of Prey. This is also the introduction to Detective Mode, which allows Batman to detect enemies through walls and highlights other important things, like gargoyles he can swing between. It's a secret tool that will help us later. Also, it was originally called Investigation Mode. Depending on how you approach this, it is either your introduction to silent takedowns or dive kicks, both of which are self-explanatory. What's also self-explanatory is why the next scene is one of the best character introductions in the game.
Harley Quinn here. How do you like my new uniform? Pretty hot, huh? Oh, I got something to show you. 1 second, B-Man.
And no, not just for that reason. This, to me, is top 5 all-time Harley Quinn designs. The others being Injustice 2, The Suicide Squad, Arkham Knight, and DC's Bombshells in no particular order, with an honorable mention going to Batman Ninja. Now's a good time to mention that all of the character designs in this game are top tier, but aside from one other that we'll get to, this is the most different from the standard design, and it perfectly takes influence from her original design while adding elements specific to this game to create a new yet still recognizable look. But enough staring. Harley, do you have a message for us?
Now the inmates are running the asylum.
You know, Harley, technically they're the Joker.
Well, technically the Joker's goons shipped in from Blackgate, but you get the idea.
Oh, so you do know. After Harley makes me wish I was a corrupt, balding, old, fat dude and revels in her new position as Warden, she does what I can only describe as the camera equivalent of a mic drop, and Oracle tells Batman that Joker's told GCPD that he will detonate bombs in the city if anyone approaches Arkham Island, which Batman knows to be a lie, which is always the correct approach to a bomb threat. Also, Batman basically calls Harley an idiot, which I still don't understand. Harley is a licensed psychiatrist, so why do these games paint her as a dumbass? Paul Dini, writer of this game, created the Harley Quinn character, so you'd expect him of all people to remember that. I'll have plenty of opportunities to talk about the massive shaft Harley gets in this series at a later date. Not like that. Well, maybe like that. There's a lot of fan fiction out there. So for now, we carry on to the Decontamination Room that is failing at its one and only job thanks to Joker flooding it with his lethal laughing gas, leading to a moment that summarizes the entire Batman character without any words being spoken. Batman decontaminates decontamination, and it is around this point that players will get their first upgrade point. The upgrade menu is very simple and split into 5 different categories: Combat, Predator, Health, Batarang, and gadgets. Experience is gained from clearing enemies and collecting Riddler things, and getting enough will earn you an upgrade point. Combat upgrades allow for special combo moves. Predator is just the inverted takedown, health is self-explanatory, Batarang is almost entirely useless, and gadgets are locked behind story progression. I always recommend getting inverted takedown first on regular playthroughs and critical strikes on repeat 100% runs. This is the only game where Batman doesn't immediately have inverted takedown, and as you'll see in a minute, it's very helpful. Critical strikes raise your combo by 2 instead of 1, and higher combos means more experience, which means more upgrades at a faster rate. The reason I don't recommend this over inverted takedowns in regular/blind playthroughs is that you probably won't get another upgrade point before you need inverted takedowns, whereas someone like me who knows the location of these Riddler trophies better than I know my own mother's birthday will get that second point. But no upgrades will help you confront the Joker, and I'm just left wondering how he got up there. Joker knows Batman is that one friend who likes to show up to parties an hour before the written time, so he decides to send out his Vince McMahon fever dream of a man to distract him. And it looks like he's been playing those soccer games a bit too much. This is technically a tutorial boss, though there's a much bigger and Spanisher tutorial boss later, so this is a tutorial for the tutorial. A tutorial, if you will. Also, you don't have to do anything. He's on a timer and dies of a heart attack. Don't do steroids, kids, especially if a creepy clown man hands them to you with his creepy clown hands.
Do I look like the kind of guy that would do that to a kid like you?
Well, Joker's escaped into patient isolation, and the only way to get in there is blocked, so all we have to do is find another way to follow him. Easy.
Just in case you were planning on following me, I've arranged a little insurance. Gordon is on his way to Harley as we speak.
Officer Bowles.
If I see you trying to follow me, he dies. Harley's looking forward to it. Maybe I'll film it and post it on the internet.
No one does that, Joker. Remember, this was in 2009, before movies and games really had an understanding of the internet, which were better times. Also, this was before posting videos on the internet had been reduced to 14-year-old girls twerking on TikTok, all while the Chinese government laps their way into their private information.
Where's your mother?
Moving on, Batman finds a way to track Bowles by analyzing his dropped bourbon and following the traces of it. And this section has the potential to have my favorite PA line in the game.
Transport to upper floors is now permitted to staff with correct security clearance. Security level is now at Orange Alpha. Alpha. Ha. 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 Ha.
Back on track, the trail brings him to an elevator. Going up, going down. Also, that cutscene is a great example of how the developers intentionally tried to frame every cutscene like it was a comic book. Also, this is the introduction to one of the Arkham series staples, the damaged Batsuit. Over the course of the game, the suit will continue to sustain more and more wear and tear, which the developers said was done to remind players of how much they had been through. Oh man, if only Batman was known to have some kind of tool that could help him traverse vertical obstacles. I feel like he does have something like that, but I just can't place it. Can someone help me out here? Thanks, Mabel. As Batman climbs, I can go over 2 more collectible things this game throws in. The first one is the audio logs I mentioned in the opening that are recorded and fully voice-acted patient interview sessions. There are 5 for all the characters that have them, and the characters that have them are Joker, Harley Quinn, Riddler, Killer Croc, Victor Zazz, and 2 friends we haven't seen yet. Ooh, intrigue. Speaking of intrigue, the next collectible is the Chronicles of Arkham, encoded messages from someone claiming to be the spirit of Amadeus Arkham. Finding those will treat you to the history and founding of Arkham Asylum and eventually clue you in on who this insane pretender is. Batman climbs with the elevator shaft and into a hallway, where we are introduced to the special gun-type evolution of the Blackgate Thugs. This also serves as a mini Predator tutorial, showing that the best method of dealing with them is to sneak up on them from behind. Perfect timing too, as it's time for the first proper Predator section. When Batman isn't facing enemies in hand-to-hand combat, he'll be stalking armed enemies in mostly large open rooms with plenty of gargoyles to swing between and vents to crawl in to remain undetected. The developers said they didn't want to make it seem like Batman was afraid of the enemies, so the Predator sections were specifically designed to come off as Batman stalking these poor, scared, shitless losers. I won't be going over every single combat and Predator encounter, this video is definitely long enough as is, but I will be mentioning every time a new aspect is added to them. In between new aspects being added to this game, Batman finds that Frank Bowles is dead as Joker somehow figured out how Batman was tracking him. Maybe talking about your plans out loud to your gamer girl GF isn't the smartest idea when dealing with someone in control of the whole place's camera system. Now back to the new aspects, Batman has a new caller.
Yes, it is I, Edward Nigma, the Riddler, and more importantly, your intellectual superior.
That's right, the Riddler is more than just Riddler Trophies, Joker Teeth, interview tapes, and Chronicles of Arkham. He's also a detached voice provided by Wally Wingert, which is the greatest Riddler performance of all time. Was Paul Dano's portrayal in The Batman better? I don't know, this video comes out the day of the movie's release and this is being written like a week before then. Riddler is somewhere in Gotham City and will occasionally chime in after Batman collects one of his things, usually reflecting how many he has or has not gotten. Speaking of things, there's still one more thing he demands you do. You didn't think the Riddler would go without any riddles, right? Despite the fact that he clearly confused riddles for puns, the riddles are the best collectible in the game. Across the map will be certain things he wants you to scan, almost all of which pertain to a character in the Batman universe that unlocks their character bio. There's ones for famous Batman villains that didn't make the cut for the game like Two-Face, Penguin, Catwoman, Mad Hatter, and Mr. Freeze, along with bios for much lesser known villains like Humpty Dumpty, Great White Shark, and Ratcatcher, who is not a beautiful Portuguese millennial, but a ginger man named Otis. There's also the much less cool perspective riddles, where you have to line up two parts of a question mark, but forget about those. It's time for the first view of the asylum exterior. Fun fact, this game was supposed to take place in the rain, but the rain had to be removed due to graphical limitations, though rain was added in the PlayStation 4/Xbox One remaster. And the reason I'm not looking at that version is because all the changes are purely graphical, and this version holds up just fine. Plus, I like the design of Batman in the remastered version less. But maybe the reason they faced the graphical limitation was because Batman's cape alone has over 700 different animations! Designing Batman's cape movements was so crucial to the team that one member spent 2 years doing it. And his hard work pays off because it, like the rest of this game, looks amazing. Despite Harley Quinn being in possession of Commissioner Gordon and trashing the Batmobile sounding like urgent objectives, this is actually the first opportunity the player has to slow down, as this section of Arkham Island is littered with Riddler trophies, riddles, and Arkham Chronicles to get. That's right, this section of Arkham Island. The island itself is split into thirds. Arkham East has the mansion and the Botanical Gardens. Gee, I wonder which Batman villain will be in there. Arkham North has intensive treatment, where we just were, and Arkham West has the penitentiary and the medical facility. Protecting the Batmobile is rewarded with the first new gadget, Explosive Gel, which allows Batman to blow up structurally weak walls and floors like he was the President of the United States targeting an innocent family in Afghanistan. And it allows Batman to pick up on Gordon's trail by following traces of tobacco from the pipe he dropped. Following the trail brings Batman to the medical facility, and marks the first time Batman ever walked through the front door.
Hey, scram, bats! This is my me time.
Can I join in on that? The game makes you think that Gordon is being tied up just off screen, but it's actually just a strangely stretched model of Harley that isn't even sitting on the chair properly. My guess is that they wanted the player to be able to see a skeleton in detective mode, but cut corners on graphics memory by reusing an asset. It's impossible to see the model in-game, so it's not a big deal, but it is funny. Bat does as man will and finds another way in, just in time to hear that Joker wants all of the doctors rounded up for no given reason, further pushing pushing the idea that there's more going on here than a simple prison break. After a Predator section that shows off the powerful and totally not lethal explosive gel against enemies, Batman is informed that 3 doctors are being held hostage in 3 different rooms, so he heads off to save them, but not before seeing a whole freaking head in a jar. This is actually the head of an enemy type that was dropped early in development. It's a subsection of a type of enemy we haven't seen yet, so I'll be sure to point it out when we get there. For now, Batman saves Dr. Young in the X-ray room, Dr. Chen in the surgery room, and Dr. Kellerman and guard Aaron Cash in patient observation, all while an interview with Dr. Young plays on the TV where she talks about her Project Titan and the Patient X who made it possible. This section is also where Batman is introduced to knife-wielding enemies, who have to be stunned with his cape before they can be attacked. With all the doctors reunited, the young one wants to go to Arkham Mansion to get her research notes so Joker can't, and Cash decides to accompany her there. Are we sure we want him going alone on that? Can someone give him a hand? But there's no time for bad puns, and you know if I'm saying that, then what's coming up must be really important, and it is. It's only the best character introduction in video game history.
There is no crane.
They're all over me!
Only Scarecrow.
It's not just the environment and cinematic that make this reveal so good, it's the surprise. See, Rocksteady has balls bigger than the moon because not once at any point in any trailers or anything was there ever any mention of Scarecrow being in the game, and he's the best fucking part of it. They even had a whole trailer that individually highlighted each of the villains in the game, and he wasn't shown, mentioned, or even teased. I mean, Harley Quinn didn't get a spotlight either, but that's just because she's the Mike Wazowski of the Arkham series. What follows is an expertly executed series of events in which Batman fails to save Gordon, can't contact Oracle, walked through roach-infested hallways on his way to the morgue, and then is shouted at by the souls of the damned to leave the morgue, which lands him back in the morgue, now complete with 3 fresh wiggling body bags. And as the ultimate detective, no, wait, he's the world's greatest detective. Ultimate detective is for someone else. Anyway, he's duty-bound to open them.
Father, you should have stood up to him, son. Like a man.
Oh, okay. Well, Bruce, you really don't have to open the next one if you don't want to.
Mom?
Help us, Bruce. Don't let us die.
Alright, well, that's both his parents, so I don't know who could possibly be in the... Well, at least things are back to normal and we can continue our hunt after Joker now.
One little bat, you're in my world now.
Somehow, in a game with the Joker in it, the best laugh doesn't belong to him. This fantastic performance was delivered by Dino Andrade, who would sadly only get to reprise this role once in a mobile game you can't even download anymore. And it's for a reason we'll see later. Also, Scarecrow is one of those 2 aforementioned unmet friends with interview tapes to collect. He is also the character with a very different design than was usually associated with him that I alluded to, and it's a huge improvement. I don't know how I feel about him being topless, it's kind of weird, but I love the mask, the glowing eyes, and the finger syringes. Completing this 2.5D platformer section temporarily defeats Scarecrow and allows Batman to continue past the dead body who obviously wasn't Gordon. They're not just gonna kill off an important character in one of these games. Yeah. And if someone attacking Batman with drugs specifically designed to bring out his biggest fears wasn't tense enough, it is immediately followed with one of the most tense moments for first-time players, as Batman has to clear the room of enemies without any of them ever knowing he entered the room. I've done it so many times that I know the pattern by heart, but everyone has to have their first time. The reward for completing that is whatever the opposite of an upskirt shot is, and a small other thing.
Bane.
I thought he broke out of Blackgate.
me down.
Who did this to you?
Dr. Young, the Bruja. She drained the venom from my blood. Must stop her.
Sorry, Hasbane. The good doctor won't be a problem much longer. How do you like my puppet? What say we cut him down?
This is the first proper boss fight of the game, and also a tutorial boss, as you'll see later. Seems a bit weird to me that one of Batman's few physically superior villains is the first boss, but not as weird as that brick falling animation that looks like footage being played in reverse. Another weird thing about this fight is that you spend a majority of it not fighting Bane. You just dodge the massive chunks of important support pillars and chuck a battering at him whenever he charges at you to stun him. Only then do you run in for a few hits, ultimately cutting one of his venom tubes so he can't restore that bar of health. A majority of the fight is spent fighting waves of nameless thugs. Gee, I hope that's not a theme with all the other boss fights in this game going forward. You know basic boss fight rules. Step 1, figure out the pattern. Step 2, repeat the pattern 3 times. Step 3, profit. But this ain't no weak-ass bitch Bane that'll be stopped by a small thing like a whole room collapsing on him, and he's set to break Batman's back again when Batman decides now is a perfect time to remind everyone why he's the most badass man to ever wear underwear the wrong way.
I will break you, Batman! Then the Bruja!
No, Bane. This time I break you!
Batman sees Gordon off, and realizing there's something up with Dr. Young draining Bane's venom and Joker needing her alive, decides to head to his cheap free mobile port version of a Batcave on Arkham Island to investigate her research. Doing so reveals that Dr. Young was experimenting on the Arkham inmates and that the Project Titan formula creates temporary Banes without needing the storage tank with obvious weakness tubes like the aforementioned Luchador. That's what Joker is really after, as he wants to create an army of roid-raging meatheads, or as he puts it later, Titan-enhanced mutant babies. However, the formula isn't in her notes. In fact, that's what she was so adamant about getting earlier. So now, Batman has to retrieve that formula before Joker gets his gloved hands on it. To help in this quest, Batman equips a new gadget, the Batclaw, capable of opening wall grates, pulling boxes, scorpioning enemies, and nothing else. But that's all he needs to progress through the sewers.
Find you. Rip your flesh like paper.
Okay, not that way, not that way! As Batman scales the catacombs, he and Oracle piece together that Joker funded Project Titan under the alias Jack White and broke into Arkham to find the formula and create the monsters himself after Young found out about his alias and tried to pull the plug. Upon returning to the surface en route to the mansion where Doc Young was headed, Batman discovers that the thugs have gained access to the Epic Games Fortnite store and now have snipers. He should just call Ninja and get them banned for stream sniping.
Please, dude. If you guys can't connect the dots.
But no high-powered weaponry capable of swiftly and politely sending a bat into hell can stop Batman from reaching the Arkham Mansion, where Joker's uninsured employees are ransacking every inch of the place in search of the not-so-good doctor's notes. In the mansion is also where Scarecrow's interview tapes are found, and I point this out solely because the first one features the characters Dr. Combs and Dr. Murphy. Dr. Combs is a reference to Jeffrey Combs, voice of Scarecrow in the new Batman Adventures, as well as Brainiac in Injustice 2 and Herbert West in Reanimator. Following this theme, Dr. Murphy is a reference to Cillian Murphy, who played Scarecrow in 2005's Batman Begins. Batman saves some people from a combustible Joker time trial, including one man whose fashion sense is roughly 12 years ahead of its time, who informs us all that Joker's thugs have gotten their hands on Dr. Young. Not like that, well, maybe. They are dangerous criminals. But anyway, it's only a matter of time before they squeeze the formula out of her, so Batman carries on through the mansion to find her, where he has an unfortunate introduction with one of the most annoying mechanics in the game.
Well, they've got some other name, but, well, we just use them to monitor patients' heartbeats. If it drops too low, the alarm goes off and a crash team rushes in.
And so does my crew if you trigger one.
It is now impossible to clear a Predator room without anyone knowing you're there, as they will all be alerted after you take someone down. Also, you can't hang around after you incapacitate someone, as they will all go to the body. You have to strike and bounce. But it's not like they use them in a circumstance where you have to go through a room with a complicated layout without any enemies knowing you're there or anything. Batman saves Aaron Cash, who is once again being held hostage, proving he really did need a hand escorting Doc Young, before breaking into her office to discover that she managed to retrieve the formula. And the fact that Joker needs to torture her to get the formula confirms that she successfully hid it somewhere else. Batman decides not to take the brute force approach. Strange, considering he's the biggest non-crocodilian brute force on this island. He instead tracks Young's recent fingerprints back to the library, allowing him to easily locate and destroy the formula. What about that, Joker?
How about our old friend Zazz?
Oh, okay. Well, clearly someone failed at the one objective Batman gave them. As detached voices relive the last night of the Waynes, I want to briefly mention how this, one of the most memorable scenes in the game, was done. Usually, to indicate infinite distance, a game will unload a chunk already traversed and reload it at the end, but not here. There are actually 4 versions of this hallway all adjacent to one another, and Batman is seamlessly teleported from one to another with each lightning strike. Back to analyzing this scene in my usual story-centric manner, this is a brilliant scene that both continues to play off of Bruce's fears while portraying the death of the Waynes in a way that feels fresh for people who have seen it over and over and over again, as well as informative and interesting for people who have never experienced the Batman character before, which the developers said was a main goal of the game, creating an experience that can be enjoyed by hardcore Batman fans and newcomers to the character alike. While Batman roams around Scarecrow's world, coming soon to Universal Studios probably, I want to mention one aspect of this game that die-hard fans have probably been anticipating this whole video: the game over screens. Game over screens in video games are simple. You die, the game tells you you've died, and asks if you want to continue or if you're a chicken. Arkham Asylum sees that and upgrades it to "You're dead." The villain who killed you mocks you for dying, leaving you no choice but to continue and prove why it's a terrible idea to mock the goddamn Batman.
I salute my fallen enemy!
After Batman conquers his fears once again, he finds himself atop the clock tower. But Batman is not a fan of late 90s survival horror games, so with no door to open, he rings the doorbell of the door he creates.
Big scary man, wears a cape, jumps out of the shadows. But anyone? No? Good.
And really, there's only one way to describe this reintroduction. And yes, I know what I said at the end of my World's End Club video. I live in bread, but French. Continuing the search for Dr. Young brings Batman into contact with the first stun baton enemy. They have to be jumped over and attacked from behind, because apparently it's too hard for Batman to attack anywhere on the front where the zappy zaps aren't. The young doctor is just on the other side of the door in the Warden's office, along with the bald psychopath Zazz. He goes down in one hit with a batarang, weak sauce, and Dr. Young reveals that she gave up the formula and that the Titan production facility is hidden in the Botanical Gardens. But the only way to get in there is the security codes hidden in the Warden's safe.
I think he's insane. Oh my god!
Get out of the way! You think?
Poor Dr. Young. Still, you know how Mr. J hates a squealer. Talking about squealers.
Somebody help me!
Oh yeah, remember that Harley took Warden Sharp hostage? Well, Batman is finally deciding to bother with that now that it benefits him, as the Warden has the other half of the code sequence needed to access the gardens. You know the name of the game by now. Batman needs to find something and isolate a trail to lead him right to it. But before that, there's the secret of this room that everyone knows by now. Placing all 3 rounds of explosive gel on a certain wall in the Warden's office and detonating it exposes the Warden's secret room that isn't even on the map, filled with concept art for this game's sequel, Arkham City. In fact, this secret was so well hidden that Rocksteady actually had to tell people about it before anyone found it. On the trail of Quincy Sharp's blood, Batman arrives at the penitentiary. You didn't forget that this is an insane asylum, right? This may be pushing insanity to its extreme, especially to happen to this many people, but there is a reason given, though we won't be hearing that reason in this video. At least they're the only potential threat in this place. I mean, with a penitentiary you'd expect more.
Stop! Stop, Batman, please! You've got to help my babies!
Ah, well, at least she's locked up.
What the heck? I'll cut your break.
That feels so much better.
Okay, but the monkey people are
Here's a bit of civil unrest I cooked up just for you.
Well, silver lining, Batman saves the Warden and gets the code sequence from him, unlocking the cryptographic sequencer, basically allowing Batman to override security panels by tuning to the right frequency to destroy it. I haven't given a gameplay recommendation in a while, so I suggest you get the cryptographic sequencer upgrades as early as you can. One makes it easier to find the correct frequency, you'll see why that's helpful in a bit, and the other increases the range in which you can use it, which is required to get all the Riddler stuff. Contest winner! With the sequencer in belt, there's nothing stopping Batman from confronting Joker in the gardens. Oh, aside from these guys. From this point on, Arkham Asylum turns into Jump Scares the Musical, as these lunatics will jump out from all angles at unexpected times. And that head in a jar in the medical facility was going to be attached to the body of a variant of the lunatics that had a melee weapon. Luckily, they're easy to counter and take out, but that's the only threat.
You know, Bats, I always thought there was a spark between us. Well, now there is.
You know, Harley, I think there is too. Before Batman can leave, he must complete the 3 trials of Harley Quinn, the first of which is taking out enemies while Harley inspires Miley Cyrus to create the worst song of 2013, which is saying something. Anyway, this trial is pretty easy, though the gap in the center can easily get in the way of your combos. Yes, it was, and I told you she was into me. The second trial of Harley Quinn is to withstand the sickest burn of 2009.
Look who's finally turned up, the Dark Knight himself. How's it hanging, Babs?
In actuality, the challenge is to disable the electricity in the water and cut down 2 guards before the room floods with Joker toxin, ending with a 30-second timer no matter how long you take. See now why the cryptographic sequencer power upgrade is helpful? There will be more timed ones later. Trial 3, as it should be, is the hardest one. Harley will send waves of enemies at Batman and he has to take them out while paying attention to the floor, as Harley will occasionally electrify one of the sections and he has to run to a safe one before Harley gets a chance to serve Joker some fried bat wings. While this loosest definition of a boss fight is going on, I'd like to mention that cell that is obviously sticking out from all the others. Mr. Freeze is one of the greatest villains of all time, and everyone knows his association with the Arkham games, but he was originally going to be in this game first. He was ultimately cut as the developers and writer didn't think his motives lined up with the Joker, so he would have no reason to try and stop Batman. With all the enemies taken care of, let's see the acrobatic ace Harley Quinn go head to head with the ultimate fighting machine, Batman. Well, that was disappointing. This could have been a really fun and challenging fight where Harley used her speed and agility to match Batman's brute force, but I guess we have to wait 2 more games to get a good hand-to-hand combat boss fight. But seriously, she's one of the first villains you see in the game and she goes down with 1 reversal. And this isn't even the most Harley gets shafted in this series. But hey, at least we have a party list with fun references us Batman fans can enjoy.
That's my party list!
Quiet.
Batman, you're a stronger man than I. Obviously. For those who don't know, Selena Kyle is Catwoman, Harvey Dent is Two-Face, Jervis Tetch is the Mad Hatter, Basil Carlo is Clayface, Waylon Jones is Killer Croc, Oswald Cobblepot is the Penguin, and Luke Oliver is the contest winner I mentioned earlier.
Well, I'm the Joker, baby!
The crossed out names are people who aren't currently in the asylum.
Well, he'll get me out, you'll see! Yeah, you'll see.
Harley, you don't need the Joker to get you out. I think you can easily slip through the giant gaps between those bars. The party list isn't important at all, by the way. What's more important is the scan of Harley's handprint that Batman gets, as it will lead him right to the hidden garden lab. As Batman leaves, Joker calls Harley a Daniel Bryan, though since she went for a Trouble in Paradise, I guess a Kofi Kingston, and Joker calling Harley a B+ player is the closest this series ever gets to exploring how Harley is just another victim of the Joker's abuse, aside from one throwaway line later in the game, which is only the most interesting part of the Harley Quinn character, so good job, game. The Botanical Gardens are where the last set of interview tapes are found, belonging to none other than Poison Ivy. In the Botanical Glass House is a riddle pertaining to the Mad Hatter, and the reason I bring this up is because, much like Mr. Freeze, Mad Hatter was originally going to be in this game. He was going to be hosting a tea party at the center of a hedge maze controlled by Poison Ivy, but the dev team thought it clashed with the feel and style of the rest of the game, so it was cut. Progressing beyond that room leads to the first time Batman has seen Joker in person since he unleashed that Proto-Titan in intensive treatment. You can actually get a slightly different scene if you go to the other route and disable the generator first. With the main path blocked, Batman takes the conveniently located vent path, which drops him in yet more catacombs he has to climb while Joker does amateur science class experiments. He makes it to the other side and continues on to the aviary, and I'm sorry for the PTSD I just triggered in the people who have bad memories with this room.
What's wrong with you, bro? What the heck? You tripping, bro? You tripping!
Remember that joke I made about the suicide collars earlier? Well, this is that room. Batman has to traverse the whole thing and make it into the control room to save the suspended hostages without any of the gunmen knowing he's entered the room. Once you figure out the paths you're supposed to go down, which isn't very obvious, or memorize the guard patterns, it's not that tough, but it's a nightmare the first time through. Speaking of nightmares, hello Titans! People have mixed opinions on the Titan enemies. Personally, I don't have a problem with them. They're a fun challenge, introduced late enough to not become overused, and give this game its own identity. Also, you never fight a Titan all on its own. You're either fighting two at a time or fighting one with normal enemies mixed in. You fight them the same way you fought Bane. Yeah, the tutorial boss coming in handy in the last fourth of the game. Flick a batarang when they charge at you, dodge out of the way, then lay into them until they recover. However, Titans have one added benefit that Bane didn't have. Each time you fully lower a third of their health bar, Batman will be able to temporarily ride the Titan, which is a great way to deal damage to the other enemies. Batman defeats the Titans and most likely destroys the production plant in the process, but Joker still managed to escape with some, so the fight isn't over yet. However, Batman is stuck in there. What's a billionaire tech genius to do? Exactly that. The line launcher, as it sounds, is Batman's own personal zipline, and it allows him to traverse long gaps. Batman realizes that the venom plant that has been used to create the Titan is the key to finding a way to reverse the effects. And wouldn't you know it, there just so happens to be a plant expert in the very same building. See, I told you Harley is a genius. She's secretly working with Batman and let Poison Ivy out, knowing Batman would need her help to stop Joker and reverse the Titan.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together.
Alright, Ivy, where is this plant that can stop the Titan?
Oh, in Killer Croc's lair. You didn't think it would be easy, did you?
Okay. As Batman leaves, Joker decides to f with him just a little more by giving Ivy some Titan, which doesn't give him a 40-foot killer plant like he wanted, but does create the most annoying enemy in the game. These f***ing pods. Get near them and they'll send out toxic bubbles that launch themselves at Batman and do significant damage. The bubbles can be taken out with a batarang, the main and really only benefit to getting the multi-batarang upgrade, and the best way to destroy these pods is to crouch walk to them before fisting their entire mouth to death. They wouldn't be that big of a problem if their detection range wasn't so big and if they weren't absolutely everywhere in the overworld now. Batman visits Cash in the mansion to find out that the easiest way to access Croc's lair is an intensive treatment, meaning we're returning to the first building of the game, but some renovations have been made since then.
Are they ready? Have you planted the explosives yet?
I hate this room. It's not too hard, the roof basically serves as a gargoyle, but something about it always gives me trouble. But after clearing it, the PA system has a question to ask.
Did anyone catch the game last night?
I love this game so much. What makes this scene even greater than it is at face value is that it perfectly uses the rule of threes most often associated with comedy. I always explain the rule of threes as set up the joke, continue the joke, expand the joke. With Scarecrow, the setup is the scene in the morgue, the continuation is reliving the murder of his parents, and the expansion is switching targets from Batman to the player, making their fears of the game crashing and their progress being lost seemingly become a reality. And the fourth wall breaking beauty doesn't stop there.
With a bat.
For those unaware, controllers don't have middle sticks. It takes a special game to be able to break the fourth wall so massively yet not break the immersion of the experience, and this one pulls it off flawlessly because it's not just targeted at the player. It's also preying on Batman's fears of becoming as insane as those he fights against and failing to save Gotham. But Scarecrow isn't satisfied with another one and done, so he gives Batman an extra dose, leading to the third boss fight in the game, which is also spent almost entirely fighting other enemies, aside from the brief moments where you aim a spotlight at them.
Oh, scary! Oh, shiver my timbers! Shut up, man!
Crane, still not satisfied, decides he's going to walk in the footsteps of his big screen counterpart and flood Gotham's water supply with his fear juice. But someone down there has a personal vested interest in keeping the water fear juiceless. With Scarecrow out of the way until 2015, Batman is now free to deal with Croc in what is either the best or most disappointing boss fight in the game, depending on who you ask. You have to carefully cross this weird series of floating platforms in order to collect the plant samples Batman needs, all the while hitting Croc's shock collar with a batarang whenever he pops up. Yeah, it's not really a boss fight, which is a bit disappointing for a character they showed in the intro of the game, but is perfectly suited to him. Although this boss fight is pure bullshit on hard. Wanted to put that out there. I do like the section at the end when you have to just book it though. And right after that, it's right back to water pollution problems. After returning to the Batcave to synthesize an antidote and obtaining the one and only appearance of the Ultra Bat Claw, capable of giving the player arthritis as they pull down weak walls and ceilings, Batman discovers that Joker is pouring the Titan Discharge into the catacombs. Basically, that chamber fills up with water before dumping it into Gotham River, which is now incredibly dangerous. So Batman becomes a plumber as he breaks into the pumping station and shuts the pumps down, which includes my personal favorite Predator section and what I believe to be the toughest combat section. Most people say it's one coming up later, you know the one, but for my money, it's this one. The other one is difficult, but this one has the added challenge of being in a much smaller environment. Luckily, the Considerate Titan exposed the perfect way back to the surface, allowing Batman to easily return to the Botanical Gardens to stop Ivy from turning Arkham Island into Jumanji.
I'm waiting in here. Come to me.
Alright, I've played enough Japanese games, so that tentacle better not take a Japanese tentacle monster turn. What did I just say? Anyway, this fight sucks. I mean, it's a fun and challenging boss fight, but it rides the very fine line of being tedious and being too challenging to be tedious. She throws those toxic bubbles at Batman, and you have to both roll away from them while also throwing a batarang at her as she's shooting them, as that's the only time her pod opens. She also causes deadly vines to shoot out of the ground that you have to dodge out of the way of, and then in her second phase, she calls in enemies while she's creating vines, and I cannot tell you how many times I was fighting the enemies just to accidentally jump too close to the vines and get caught in them. My tips for this fight are to stay in the middle as much as you can and throw a batarang right after she fires the first bubble. Also, dodging forward seems to ensure the batarang lands on time and you avoid the bubble. With Ivy defeated, it's finally time.
Party time, it's party time. Everybody's feeling fine 'cause it's party time. Party time, it's party time.
Joker beckons Batman to the party, the entrance to which serves as a nice reference to a serious house on Serious Earth. With all this build up, this party better be the bomb.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, one!
Not what I meant! Alright, now let's get this party started with what most people consider to be the hardest combat scenario in the game. Alright, now that that's over, what's next on the party agenda?
I have nothing to live for.
Ah, crap. Well, in my experience, no good party is complete without a suicide. Good night, everybody! Come on, you knew that wasn't the ending. This is the final boss of the game, Titan Joker! And it's the worst fight in the game, as well as the series as a whole. He's this menacing and physically dominating threat, but he only takes a couple swings at Batman at a time before sending his goons while he poses for the helicopters. You beat them up, pull him down with the Ultra Bat Claw, punch him, and repeat 2 more times. You even get a replenished health bar each time, completely removing the last shreds of challenge this fight could have had. At least we get a badass cutscene at the end.
I can take it. I can take anything you throw at me, Bats. You can't beat me. I'm actually going to win. Ready for the next round?
Always.
What?
I'll never let you win. Never.
Then, after the credits roll, you get one of 3 cutscenes. One shows that Bane is still alive, another Killer Croc, and finally Scarecrow. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the greatest game of all time. You heard what I just said, so I might as well get this out of the way now. Batman Arkham Asylum gets a 10 out of 10, making it the second game on the channel to get christened Awesome! I know I brought up some issues I have with how the story and boss fights play out, as well as the treatment of some of those characters, Harley, but none of those take away from the fact that this is my favorite game of all time. The setting, the story, the gameplay, the characters, the franchise it's set up, all of it is iconic, and I make it a mission to replay this game every single year, and I have yet to get tired of it. This is as perfect of an introduction to Batman as one could hope for, as it perfectly explains the tone, personalities, and dynamics of the world and those that inhabit it. And even with all the praise I gave the game throughout the video, there were still things I didn't get to mention, like the insane detail in the environmental storytelling, with each building using a different art style to create a different feeling, and the exceptional voice talent of everyone outside the big 3. Even with Titan Joker being a disappointing final boss, I can sort of understand Rocksteady's dilemma there. Joker is never really a physical threat to Batman, yet the nature of video games basically requires a boss fight between them. What I would have done was have the first stage of the final boss be Batman versus a recently freed Harley Quinn while regular Joker watches on. That way her going down like a punk bitch actually has some sort of payoff because this is the real fight. Then, when she goes down, Joker steps in and quickly gets his purple axe handed to him on a platter paler than his face, so he relies on the Titan injection as a last resort. Then it becomes a regular Titan fight with other goons sprinkled in, with the added mechanic of having to ride Titan Joker into the electric wall to stun him long enough to get some good shots in. Just something that, you know, isn't just a mutant clown beast posing for a camera while you beat up his much less impressive slaves. But I appreciate and love the game for everything that it is, and focus on that more than I focus on what it isn't. And despite the fact that this is my favorite game of all time, and probably always will be, I can fully admit that the sequel is objectively a much better game. And next time, we'll see why. I hope to see you there.
Continue?
Wake up, Mr. Wayne. We have much to discuss.